Welcome to Alphanumeric, a compendium of poetry and fiction selected by the staff of Zoetic Press. This week, Haunting Hollers. Sometimes, when you scream into the void, something will whisper back. Come join us. One of the good ones. Stopped at a traffic light, I see a furry purple mosquito wearing a long red tie and holding a butterfly net in a humanoid hand. A pest control mascot, a corporate logo on a truck, menacing in his contrived cuteness. What's his backstory, I wonder? What rejection, a prom, a promotion, made an insect with insect parents, insect teachers, insect co-workers join the fight for insect genocide? Was it the sign-on bonus? The conviction that he's one of the good ones? The uniform? The hollow authority of a useless butterfly net? I bet he often jabs a plastic straw into veins and inhales because he's so macho, because flying egg receptacles, his term for females, suck blood, and anything they can do, he can do better. I'm part of the solution. The final solution, I imagine him quipping and spitting out blood as his ghastly joke leaves him doubled over, gasping for breath. But he doesn't get the problem and doesn't know his master's equation. Insect plus suit plus tie equals cosplaying insect. One of the good ones? Not to us. And to them, he's a killing joke. They choke on laughs, imagining him, the self-important gasser, becoming the gassed once he's gassed the others in the miniature orange jumpsuits, the uniform destined to replace his tie and grotesque mosquito executive costume. Haint seen nothing. My name is Harlan Grubb, and this is a true story, though some parts didn't happen. When I was 11 going on 12, my cousin Ennis dared me to walk from the top of the holler, through Black Maggie's woods and out Old Hope Cemetery to the creek at the bottom in the dead of night. I still think he done me dirty, daring me right in front of Mary Gay Hollister like he did. Of course, I'd have done it anyway, but doing it right in front of the girl I was sweet on was a nasty trick. It was just after church one Sunday, and Mary Gay and I was strolling along the path together when we came across Ennis holding court with a pack of little uns. He was going on about the ghost of the witch Black Maggie who stalked the woods at night looking for kitties to put in her pot. I said that he was full of the stuff that makes the grass grow, and he looked at me serious-like and says if that was so, I'd take a stroll through the woods after dark. "Don't do it, Harlan," Mary Gay beseeched. "Everyone knows them woods is hexed, and Old Hope is just filled with haints." "Well, half of my kinfolk are buried there," I said, smiling. "Might be nice seeing 'em." "What if you wander onto the railroad tracks like Aunt Gillespie did 2 summers back?" she asked. I smiled wider and said, "Well, then I'll just hop the freight and ride the rails clear to Tennessee." It made her smile as well, despite her fears, and she could see I would not be moved, so she had her mamaw make me up a conjure bag to wear. "It's to ward off evil," she said. "It's got mugwort, mountain ash, a piece of cold iron, and a Bible verse in it." Then she blushed all up pink and looked at her shoes. "I put a little lock of my hair in it as well." "Oh, hell," I said, puffing out my chest. "I don't believe in none of that granny witch stuff. The worst thing I'll meet in those woods is a raccoon and maybe a moonshiner." I did take the bag, of course, though it was just 'cause I was sweet on her and didn't want to hurt her feelings none, you understand. And so, with the moon rising, I commenced my travels. I was to meet Ennis and the other boys down on the other side of the creek at the bottom of the hill. She was a big old gal, that moon, so that I could see my way pretty well through there, and even though the woods were a mite dark, I kept my bearing with the stars. It was one of those late summer nights when, if you cock your head right when the wind is blowing, you could smell fall not far off. Some might have been scared at this point 'cause of all that talk of the witch Black Maggie's hex and haints and unnatural critters. Not me, though. I walked right and said, "I ain't scared of no haints or old granny witches, you hear?" That was when I heard a little something moving around in the trees. I knew folks talked about a wampus cat hunting in those woods. I didn't believe in no wampus cats, of course. That was more hog swill. And though I might have started walking just a hair faster, it wasn't 'cause I was scared of a made-up critter. I was just eager to get the job over with. So I was walking a mite bit faster, and that sound that wasn't a wampus cat was still hanging behind me. And that's when I spotted two big ol' eyes looking down from a tree. I had heard some boys telling tales about a big old fellow with wings instead of arms that flew just like a moth over West Virginia way. I knew there wasn't no such thing as mothmen, of course, and whatever was up in that tree weren't no monster, so that ain't why I began to move a bit quicker, just so you understand. I was just about halfway down the side of the hill, with the two big old critters behind me and Old Hope in the creek ahead, going at a good pace. 'Twas then I saw an old granny moving around in the trees. She was skinny as a stick, her hair all a mess, sticking up crazy like, and she was reaching out with long, bony-looking fingers. In the dark, she was just a shape, so's I couldn't make out her face. Even still, though, I knew it weren't Black Maggie, seeing as she'd been in her grave some 100 years already. I started running just 'cause I didn't want to get caught up talking to some old granny in the woods when I had a dare to finish, you see. So there I was running, and I see the rough stone wall and the first graves of Old Hope, dotted all over the ground like little nasty teeth. There was a thick old mist rolling around 'em, and I was trying my best not to trip and break my neck going through. The air smelled of moss and rich, wet soil. I took a nice, deep breath and held it, puffing out my cheeks like a chipmunk. Some folks do that 'cause they're afraid of haints, but I just think it's proper, and my mama raised me to be proper. That's when I heard this terrible, great screaming sound rumbling up out of the woods, sounding like an earthquake and a screech owl all rolled into one. Then a strange and ghastly light shone through the trees and fell on the graves. I saw her then, a real live ghost. She stood with arms stretched out to her sides, her skin all gray and seeming to glow when the light hit her. The mighty squealing sound was still going strong, and I knew she must have been wailing like the haints in tales do, foretelling doom and death. You might think I was scared, but I didn't bat an eye, just kept right on a going past. It took a trick to keep on running while I held my breath, let me tell you. Then I heard voices talking and the sound of water. I was getting close. Some folks believe that a haint can't cross no moving water, so I just started booking my way down, falling over roots and rocks as I did. I came out of the trees, and there was Ennis and his friends in the creek, the moon shining off it like a lantern. "Boy, she pops! He did it!" I heard little Corbin Lewis hollering. "Not yet. Still gots to cross the water," Ennis said. That's when they all started shouting, "Come on, Harlan! That's it! Almost there! Come on! Come on!" I reached the bank of the creek, and I didn't stop. Throwing myself off the shore, I flew through the cool night air and hit that water with an enormous splash like a record-breaking trout. The cold stung, and my mouth filled with the taste of grit and alkali. Still, I swam hard, heading toward the sounds of human voices. Finally, my hand hit the other shore, and I pushed myself up off the ground. I rolled onto my back and laid there, taking a nice, deep breath of night air and looking up at the stars, drenched in the water of the mountains. Presently, the gaggle of boys all gathered around me and looked me over. Their mouths were agape with wonder, and I stared back up at them. "What happened?" asked one. "What did you see?" asked another. I took a few more deep breaths, then reached out and let them haul me up. "Aw, hell," I said, sitting up. "There's nothing in those woods." An old palm tree. No one ventured to linger under the palm near the crematorium. There was an occult snake in a hole on the trunk. Nobody had seen it. Spooky fronds grew in the dark. An owl's hoot entertained the ghost. It was an arcane alarm before seizing a soul. The rustic lips rippled holy words. Those knuckleheads pretended to be know-it-alls. Though different in caste and creed, they were unified in delusion. The village woodcutter, whose mind was wedged between superstition and stupidity, couldn't even touch the giant tree. He knew it would bleed, triggering his death. Now, a new highway is taking shape. A chainsaw's vroom pierces the bucolic belief. No bleeding. Nothing uncanny beneath the bark. But these people aren't dismayed, for they have lost just one palm. The mouth of Florida. They tell us the swamp has a mouth. Not teeth, not tongue, not lips, just a mouth big enough to swallow a whole town. When the night is hot and the frogs scream too loud, you can hear it breathe. Inhale, the cypress bow. Exhale, the sawgrass rattles. Mama says if you lean close enough to the water, it will whisper your name, syllable by syllable, until you forget it was ever yours. We grow up testing her words. We throw stones into the shallows, count the ripples, wait for the echo. Sometimes it calls back. Sometimes it stays quiet, like it's waiting for us to say something worth the answer. The elders warn us, don't talk to the swamp. Don't listen too long. The swamp remembers more than you do. But warnings don't matter to children. Warnings are the first door you open. The first time I heard it speak clear, I was 10 years old, crouched with my cousin Jonah at the levee. We had dared each other closer and closer until our toes slid into the mud. The air hung heavy, mosquitoes chewing our necks raw. And then it spoke. Not a growl, not a chant, a voice, low, familiar. It said Jonah's name the way his mama used to say it when she called him in from the porch. Jonah froze. His mama had been dead 3 years. The voice said it again, longer this time. Jonah. His mouth trembled, but no sound came out. Then he ran, faster than I'd ever seen him, tripping through the cane until he disappeared. I stayed. I stayed because the swamp was still calling, and after Jonah's name, it whispered mine. The mouth of Florida doesn't speak in sentences. It sings in syllables, stretches vowels, clicks consonants like bones. It makes a hymn out of your breath, a chant out of your silence. It tells you what you didn't know you wanted to hear. Some nights, the whole town gathers by the water. Old men with shirts unbuttoned to their navels, girls with braids heavy as ropes, mothers rocking babies wide-eyed with sleep. We line up along the bank, waiting, because sooner or later, the swamp always speaks. It told Rosa she'd marry a man with a smile sharp as a hook. She did. He left. She came back, stood on the bank, and the swamp crooned her name softer, like an apology. It told Mr. Alvarez he'd lived to 99. He laughed, slapped his knee. The next year, he died at 62. The swamp never took it back. It told me once, you will vanish and return, vanish and return. I waited for more, but the reeds just shivered like they were clapping for themselves. The swamp has no loyalty, no pity. It speaks what it wants, and we keep coming back for it, greedy for sound. One night, I brought my daughter. She pressed close, holding my hand tight. "Will it talk to me?" she whispered. I told her to wait, to listen. The frogs screamed, then stopped all at once. The air shifted, and then the voice rose, rolling across the water. Her name, drawn out, sweet, almost laughing. She gasped, clutched my arm. "Did you hear?" she asked. I nodded, though my heart clenched, because the voice was mine. The swamp had borrowed my own mouth. I thought of Mama, how she used to say, "If the swamp calls you in your own voice, never answer back. That's how it gets you." We backed away, slow. My daughter kept asking what it meant. I told her nothing. I told her everything. We didn't go back for a long time. But the mouth doesn't forget. It keeps breathing, pulling names out of the dark. Sometimes when I wash dishes, I hear it sigh in the pipes. When I dream, I hear my own voice humming from under the floorboards. When I wake, the sheets smell faintly of algae and salt. The mouth is not closing. The mouth is not done. They say one day it will open wide, wider than the river, wider than the sky. And when it does, every name it ever called will tumble out at once. Dead names, unborn names, names of people who left and never came back, names of those who never had names at all. A flood of syllables, rising, falling, colliding until the whole world drowns in sound. When that happens, there will be no need to hide, no need to listen. We will all be speaking at once, and the swamp will finally be silent. Until then, we wait by the levee. We press our ears to the water. We breathe when it breathes. We sing when it sings. We wait for the mouth to open again. Because, in the end, Florida doesn't have coasts or borders or counties. Florida has only the mouth. And sooner or later, we all go in. Crossroads. I heard the dead feast on sun-fat apples down where the wheel and the highway sing. The stars and hillstones shimmer in the song as ghosts draw close to the mist-veiled oak by the dream-spanned bridge to Avalon, where you cross to that sleepy shore in grief as summer bent its golden head, beneath the reaping blade and combine's roar, where a hedge witch, her leafy fingers spread to catch the sun, crouched 1,000 years. Her crooked back bent low at Green Street by the crossroads, tangled in the knots and yarns, earth-rooted clay and flying time, holding tight the anvil stone, where the song thrush breaks snails from their shells, and where 2 midnights meet, so the living and the dead might dream of the old hill. Strong-footed in the ripe wheat, side by side, united in the acorn spell, and heart in heart held dear by the lithe ash, walk among the spring snowdrops and greening thorn, and ride through late October's leafy storm, and in fruitful autumn pick penny buns, and leap the wild white rushing winterborn, and dance footprints through December snow, and at harvest kiss the golden corn. And you might cross again to walk among the cranesbill and meadowsweet and ox-tongue, once more descend from out the Barrow Hill, our paths folded in the old lane, as rests the sun at the door of night, like a half-awakened dream. Yet I call you home, and your light grows pale. I say awake. Unwilling, you cling to sleep. You are fugitive in my memory as the flowers fade from their summer bloom. Your face has changed, too strange and ghostly beneath the far October stars, so bright. and your eyes are lost in shadows so deep, and you speak only of that distant shore, and when I draw aside your long black veil, you plead that you are disturbed no more. The RAF Pilot. Memories. I once saw Michael Trent in London. It was long after the war, and my mother was looking the other way, thank God, because I didn't want to share him, not even with my mother. It was special seeing him, even though it was just a glimpse. The day was not remarkable. There was no miracle about it, although I do remember the sun was smiling at us. But then I was only 5 at the time, so the sun could still do things like smile instead of shine. And then I knew it was surely him. Michael looked like the photograph we had, standing at attention. His Royal Air Force uniform appeared almost starched. When you think about how impossible that would be, because the photo was taken in 39 and the war was everywhere then. No one had time to do such things as starch a uniform. 1939 was 8 years after my mother met him. Her stories about them together were always spellbinding. The days were perfect, their clothing was perfect, her perfume was exquisite, although, to hear her tell it, it was the last quarter ounce of the most expensive French perfume on the continent. And maybe that part was true, because both she and I wanted it to be that way. That day in London, we were hurrying along Bridge Street. There was the remaining rubble on the curb, and some even in the street. My woolen skirt was making my knees itch, and I cursed the warmer weather because we couldn't afford suitable clothes with the changing season. But when I saw Michael Trent, I forgot the itchy wool rubbing my irritable knees. His hair was longer, blonde with some red highlights picked out by the sun. I remember how he saw her, my mother, and then looked down at me, he being well over 6 feet tall, and his face became sad. He lifted his hand up and waved and called out, "Daria!" And she turned and saw him, and the world changed for us for the first time, at least the first time that I knew about it. The sky wore my face to the funeral. I woke with a city sewn under my skin. Lamplight was fever, towers had teeth. The clocks all forgot where the hours had been. I wandered through static, stitched under the heath. The wind clicked in glyphs carved from shattered brass bones, and shadows rehearsed what the mirrors unlearned. My echo came back in a chorus of tones, reciting the names of the lives I had burned. There were trains made of breath, saints wired for pain, and a chapel of ghosts where my copy once prayed. He bled into circuit, he begged for the rain, then kissed the dead wire where my pulse had decayed. So I climbed through the code, through hunger and sin, and met my own voice looking out, looking in. This has been Alphanumeric, a production of Zoetic Press. Our lead editor is Kaya Ball, and our engineer is Lee Quintana. This week you heard One of the Good Ones by Paul Burgess, Haint Seen Nothin by Jim Best, An Old Palm Tree by Fabiyas M.V., The Mouth of Florida by Bethany Bruno, Crossroads by Oliver Smith, The RAF Pilot by Renee Ebert, The Sky Wore My Face to the Funeral by Joshua Walker. Have you gotten your copy of Non-Binary Review issue number 41, Solarpunk? If you haven't heard of Solarpunk, this is a great way to dip your toe into some beautiful, clean, hopeful waters. Right about now, we can all use some hope, right? Get your copy at zoeticpress.com or on Amazon. We've got a whole bunch of pieces from the past year that we nominated for Best of the Net. The wonderful thing about those pieces is that you can see them online right now. Head over to zoeticpress.com and scroll down to see all of our Best of the Net nominees. Heathentide is coming. Get ready for the festive season by checking out all of our social media channels. Blue Talk, YouFace, Instagram, you know. Zoetic Press, because humans are hardwired to tell stories.